All right,
All
round
right,
two.
round two.
Welcome to. Damn, I'm sorry, I didn't stop. What was the name of the podcast again? What you didn't know.
What you
Okay,
didn't know.
okay. All right. So, welcome to part two of what you didn't know. We're back again here with Dr. Orman. My name is Marcus Bethay, the owner of C3 Wellness. Our acupuncturist is here, Dr. Orman,
Oh.
and this week we're talking about acupuncture and inflammation. So, how do you want to start? Where do you want to go from here?
Inflammation, I kind of look at it as two parts. One part is there is a healthy version of inflammation. So, somebody goes to the gym, somebody goes for a run, plays pickleball, and the body builds up natural inflammation. So the purpose of it is to break the muscle down and then rebuild it. That type of inflammation, we love that. But the bulk, when people really think of inflammation, they're referring to as the unhealthy type of inflammation.
Okay.
And that could be systemic, and that can be a gigantic problem. And it's becoming more and more of a problem for a number of reasons. I'll get to that in a bit. But let's start with above the head.
Okay.
I can't remember. It was maybe 10, 12 years ago in one of the magazines, Time, Newsweek or something, they talked about Alzheimer's as being a correlation with inflammation. So when the inflammation systemically, meaning in the body,
Mm-hmm.
not just the brain, starts to occur and can't be lowered, so to speak, or can't be cleared, or the body doesn't want to and just keeps producing more, that can be a contributing factor.
Okay.
And so that is one particular issue that is a personal interest area. My wife does work with that, but it's also for such a debilitating problem.
Okay.
And it seems to be increasing. And then, of course, when people think of inflammation, they usually think of joints.
Of course.
And in our model of medicine, there's excess heat type of inflammation where it's always hot, it's always red, there's a burning sensation, but there's also a what's referred to as a deficiency type of inflammation where it's sore, it's achy, but it feels better with warmth.
Understood.
So depending on the diagnosis, depending on which direction we go, the treatment would look differently. And we do get pretty good results with that. It's not always a cure by any stretch, but when you're able to make improvements, when people's joints, when people's hands, etc., are much more functional, they can do the things that they love.
Correct.
That is certainly a success.
Okay. All right. Now let's kind of delve into the good inflammation. So, like you was talking about, you go to the gym, you're working out, you're kind of increasing your, I guess, the good inflammation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, depending on how a person trains, of course. So basically what happens is they use a particular muscle. Say they do a bench press, and just for number's sake, 500 pounds to loosen up, just for number's sake, you're at 100 pounds.
Yes.
And the next, in 2 weeks, you go to 120, and you slowly start to increase. So basically what you're doing is not necessarily allowing the muscle to grow, but you're increasing the density of it.
Okay.
And in the process, you create this byproduct, which is essentially inflammation. The analogy would be as if you got just for example, like say a 6-inch tube, and maybe it's an inch in diameter, and it normally fits 5 marshmallows.
Okay.
Well, over time, when you do push-ups or when you go to the gym, etc., you squeeze more marshmallows in the area. So the muscle becomes more dense, more stronger, and also a little bit heavier.
Okay.
And so the shape changes a little bit, but not too much.
Okay.
And like I said, in the process, you have that excess heat that's created, breaks down, begins to repair. Sometimes in that cycle, it doesn't always go as smoothly as it should. That's when things like massage and acupuncture, and especially nutrition, comes in handy, which can help with that.
Okay.
Amino acids and herbs are the star of the show with that.
Replenishment. Okay, so somebody like myself, I have a very sore knee. Whenever I do squats and stuff like that, it really aggravates it. So when does good inflammation turn into bad inflammation, and how do you turn it back around to good inflammation?
There was a psychologist up in Canada who used to study people at the end of their life, and he noted that there were 5 questions that they were always asking. And one of them, he said, have you had a good soreness today?
Mm,
And a good soreness is, I ran a 10K and it felt fantastic. And now I'm king or queen of the universe, it feels like.
mm-hmm,
Oh, I woke up this morning and my elbow doesn't move. That's not a good soreness. So,
mm-hmm,
generally, when there's pain to the point of debilitation or restriction, that is an issue. I know I'm going to be a little bit sore and achy, but it's like a good kind of feel to it.
mm-hmm.
So, it
Okay.
is a little bit on the subjective side, but
Mm.
pain is usually the distinguishing thing.
Okay. All right. So, what do someone need to do to kind of turn that pain point around? How does acupuncture help with that in regards to turning it back into a good inflammation?
Well, there's 2 points. The easiest is prevention. The
Hmm.
notion is when you dig the well when you're not thirsty type of thinking. So
Mm,
getting treatment, once a month just as a preventive measure.
gotcha.
But if a person um, comes and they already they're in full blown inflammation,
Hmm.
what we do is we treat the root and the stem and the branch, I should say,
Okay.
meaning it hurts in the hand. So we would treat it locally, but there are also points which are considered cooling by nature. In other words, they flush that heat from that area, and we would treat that as well.
Okay.
And the kind of interesting thing when the tiny puncture hole that's created, a negative current is formed. So
Hmm.
white blood cells will migrate to that area and flush
Oh.
out the inflammation. That's according to Western medicine, of course.
Okay, that's cool. That's what we want to hear. So good
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. Good stuff. So now let's talk about the effects of the bad inflammation more so get into that topic. So um, you mentioned that hold on, I'm kind of
It's fine.
yeah.
I can cut this out.
Okay.
Talk more about yourself.
Okay.
If you want a human thing,
Okay. Let me
talk
think
about you.
about hmm.
When I was, and then I felt,
Okay. All right. So when I was constantly playing basketball, I know that, the more I ran, the more I jumped, the older I got, the worse the inflammation got. No matter what I did, it was hard for me to bounce back sooner than I used to when I was younger. So as we get older, how does acupuncture kind of play a part in helping us keep our youthful exuberance so I can, get back to dunking on people?
you still want the NBA,
Yeah, yeah, I'm still
huh?
trying, man. Still trying.
A couple of things. Age can sometimes play a factor, but it's usually not a big a factor as what most people think. It's the maintenance level. There was an article about 2 weeks ago. A woman, 102, just finished a marathon, her first one ever. 102,
That's
and she
crazy.
ran 26.2 miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there is the age, and age is a convenient one, but it's not always the accurate one.
Okay.
When one of the first things is getting on a good nutritional plan, which not only includes the food, but also includes herbal medicine or teas, or in this case, amino acids really play a nice part, and even
Mm,
preventative things like vitamin C.
mhm.
When that inflammation starts to occur, it helps when you flush it out. When it starts to build over time to the point where it crosses into the red, so to speak, that's
Mhm.
when it's much more difficult. And as I mentioned, getting acupuncture, there's a particular point on the side where if you put a dot on your hip and then in your armpit and kind of where the seam is on most shirts, right in the
Mhm.
middle. The point is about the size of maybe a key lime, about a 50-cent piece.
Okay.
That is called spleen 21. And when you touch it, people either laugh or it's real sore or some combination of. But what that does when you learn to massage it in a
Mhm.
particular way is flush out the inflammation head to toe, side to side, front to back. So
Mhm.
little things like that can make a difference.
Okay.
Even these days, ice baths have become kind of popular.
Okay.
And if used properly, now I'll
Correct.
get to that one in a bit, that
Mhm.
can also be very helpful.
Okay.
Now, for some people, I did an experiment. I thought I'm going to see how well this ice bath thing works out real well. So I did one every day for 30 days.
Mhm.
Hated every second of it,
Of course.
but I didn't notice a single thing.
Mhm.
In fact, I felt more sluggish. And what
Wow.
happened is for someone like me who has XYZ chemistry, it
Mhm.
slowed down my metabolism, it slowed down my
Mm.
thyroid. But for some people, they have just the opposite. So
Hmm.
it's not whether the ice bath is good or bad, it's whether it's good or bad, whether it's effective or ineffective for your chemistry.
Understood that. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I found that when I use it, if I'm outside, 3, 4 hours, and it's our usual Florida 100 degrees out,
Mm.
a short one is effective. I feel a little bit tired the next day, normal tired,
Hmm.
but not that achy soreness, I can't touch my kneecaps type of
Okay.
feel to it.
Good.
So pinpoint for some people, regular basis for others, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not always predictable. So
Mm-hmm.
people, having said that, what I've noticed is people have a tendency to be hyper and well, they talk like this, they go around, they're not that type of excess energy, they do well with it.
Oh
But
wow.
people who, what we would consider normal pace or maybe a little bit slower pace,
Mm-hmm.
they do poorly with it, unless it's precision. After a marathon, for example, there you go.
Okay.
But on a regular basis, not so much.
Okay. Now I know that there was a time where I had gotten to a really bad car accident and it created a situation where I tore some ligaments and things in my neck. And I remember coming to you guys for acupuncture, and within like a month, and I know everybody's treatment is different, but within a month, it went from being where my shoulder was jacked up like this
Mhm.
to being able to kind of alleviate that pain and that inflammation and get me back to my wellness point. So, what would you recommend for people in auto accidents and have, sort of injury, severe injury? How acupuncture can kind of help treat that?
That's when more intensive treatment is used. So normally we think once a week is for average for good strategy for most people. But when there are acute instances or shall we say severe instances,
Hmm.
that's when 2 or 3 times a week is actually very beneficial.
Okay.
And again, depending on where and what and the specifics in your chemistry, we would address it locally as well as distally,
Okay.
and then look at particular herbs or particular topical substances.
Hmm.
Off the top of my head, there is one called comfrey root,
Hmm.
which is in a capsule form. It's used to help rebuild, regenerate um, tendons and ligaments, and then flush out that inflammation. And
Okay.
then it comes like in a